Welcome to a Redacted conversation. Today we have one of my favorite fellow YouTubers. I guess, do we call ourselves YouTubers or Twitter streamers? What do we call ourselves?
I go with Rumbler now because YouTube is second in my view to Rumble. So I'm a
I'm
Rumbler.
with you. I'm with you. So yes, today we have Viva Free, Viva Fry. I'm going to say it different ways, and I'm just going to keep you guessing because because you say it's based on the German word, so I'm always like, well, should I go on the so anyway, my maiden name is Del Conte. It's much harder than that because it's two words. So I get it when you try and play off of your European name. Anyhow, thank you for joining us for a redacted conversation. You're someone I've watched for a long time for context on current events and specifically political events. So maybe you could tell our viewers why everyone loves you so much and what is your background, your legal background.
So Montreal, Quebec, Canada. For anybody who knows where that is, I think it was the most
Yes.
beautiful city in Canada until the fall of Canada. Now they're sort of like all these cities are turning into walking zombie lands. Born and raised in Montreal, youngest of five kids. Father's a lawyer, second oldest brother's a lawyer, sister's a lawyer, third oldest brother's a lawyer. So we're from a family of lawyers. I lived in Montreal, studied in law at a place called Université Laval, Laval University in Quebec City. Got my law degree, practiced for damn near 13 years, and had some point of a midlife crisis where I realized I was not going to be a litigator when I was 50. And if I was a litigator when I was 50, I'd be a very unhappy 50-year-old. And
Mm.
so discovered the internet and started doing this. It sort of morphed into a law-based, political-based channel, but not out of decision. It was sort of like that's where the powers of the universe were pushing me. Uh, and so that's where the channel got started. COVID hit, world went crazy, and a couple years into COVID, I said we've got to get the heck out of Canada because Canada seems to be descending more rapidly than the rest of the world, and got an opportunity with Rumble, and then ended up temporarily but potentially permanently in Florida. It's a beautiful state.
Yeah, so that's interesting though, because of course we all see how Canada is removing freedoms with very little fight. And then now we see the United States removing freedoms in a similar vein. But I feel like at least there's still a fight there. So that's sort of my comfort level with America right now is, wow, okay, this is tough to watch. But at least, and having lived in Europe now for 5 years, I see the same thing happening is freedom after freedom just being slipped out from under Europeans while they're not paying attention. So do you feel like the United States is a place you still can stand for things, or is there like, oh, this place is going to follow Canada and then something else on the horizon? Because this is a question I ask all the time about my family as well.
No, I'm not. I've got the answer, but I'm comfortable with my own response to that. During the trucker convoy, which is where a lot of people got to know me when I was walking the streets of Ottawa, interviewing people who were protesting, parking their cars in Ottawa to protest COVID mandates and all the tyrannical measures imposed by the government. And a lot of them were from Venezuela, Eastern Bloc. Some were from the Middle East. A lot of protesters were from tyrannical countries who fled to what they thought was the free country of Canada. And they've been in Canada for 10, 20 years. And they're telling me, like, I know what this looks like. I know what this smells like. And I see it creeping into Canada. After one of the streams in Ottawa, it was amazing. A Chinese guy, a Chinese gentleman, an older guy, he's following me. And I'm sort of getting a little nervous because I'm talking my camera and I can see my surroundings. And I end the stream, put my camera down. And he comes up to me and says, "Is your camera off?" And I said, "Yeah." And I thought I was, maybe getting in trouble. He says, "I don't want to be on camera, but I'm from China. I lived through this. And when I hear Justin Trudeau using certain terminology, it's literally like the English translation of what was said in China. I don't know which leader would have said it." He said, "Look, I see it here, and I'm terrified. And there's nowhere else to go. Like if Canada and the West falls, where are you going to go?" People, I don't know, like to make Russia sort of look like a moral leader in today's day and age, or some people at
Yeah,
least.
right.
But I'm not running to Russia. I'm not running to China. If freedom in the West falls, there's nowhere else to go to. And then you're just like picking the lesser of the evils of what's left of the world. But in Canada, I don't. There's a lot of resistance, and there's a lot of freedom fighters and patriots and people who are pushing back. But not enough in my view, and the infrastructure almost might be too far gone in order for there to be an effective pushback. When
Hmm.
there's willy-nilly freezing of bank accounts, online censorship up the wazoo, always cloaked under protecting the children, they're stifling the means through which people can effectively push back politically. I think I'm doing a more effective job in the free state of Florida, but at the very least, I think if the states fall, some states will fall later than others, and I think Florida might be the last
Yeah.
holdout, which is why it's a good place. It's a good place to be in terms of being able to politically fight back, push back, and have the freedom necessary to do so.
Yeah. And for my family, because we're expats too, as we consider repatriation, we look at the United States and we think, is the grass dead? Or is there something we can still water there? Is there something worth fighting for? And as we look around Europe, it feels like the grass is pretty dead. If the grass is freedom, right? Like, can we make a change here? Do we? And I don't know if that is. I really don't want to be accused of American exceptionalism, because that's not helpful either. But these are just big questions that you ask yourself when you have children. Where will they be least likely to be led into war? Where are they the most free to grow up? These are hard questions. And so what I like so much about your channel is that it is very much about the politics of the day, but it's for people who are raising families and trying to decide what is the world we're leaving our kids. And I think that's what motivates me. And I feel a camaraderie with you as a parent when I watch your channel. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Well, for sure, because when I left Canada, temporarily, if not permanently, I said one of two things: if I had no kids, I would have already been gone, or if I had no kids, I would stay forever and just continue there until it's unsustainable. When you
Yeah.
have kids, I'm not going down on a sinking ship to prove loyalty to something. My loyalty is to my first and most immediate family, my family. And when they came out with those vaccine mandates and the vaccine passports, where 13-year-old kids and up had to show a QR code to go into coffee shops, movie theaters, I'm like, I'm not raising a kid in this environment to the extent that I can help it. And so it's funny, but last name is Freiheit. My grandfather was from Poland, and he was one of 25 of our family members, the only one to get out of Poland. And we've talked about this with my dad, and I think his whole family, my grandfather's family, was religious. They stayed, and they said, we're not going to leave. Things will get better. And I was always asking my dad, like, how does someone make the decision to up and leave? And how does someone make the decision to stay and go down with that ship? And it's an interesting thought experiment, but to see it in real time, where you're like, get up and leave while I still can, because I,
Yeah.
I didn't get vaccinated for any travel purposes, and it's a decision whether or not I regret. We'll see how my life turns out. In terms of, I do regret it, but we'll see whether or not it has any lasting impact. But
Yeah.
when I was pressured browbeated into getting the jab years ago, they didn't yet have travel restrictions. And then you realize, like, well, if you don't get out when you can, at some point in time, you might not be able to get out anymore. And so it's this balance of staying as long as you can to effectively try to right the ship, versus understanding when that ship cannot be turned around and is going down, and then get out while you can, because at some point you won't be able to get out. So I don't know that Europe, I think, is in the same position as Canada. And I think it has something to do with the history of being subjects and not God-given free entities. Not a question of American exceptionalism, understanding the history of America and why Americans have a different, or had a different, zeitgeist to the rest of the world, because they fought this tyranny to take back their God-given rights. They weren't subjects who were bestowed rights by the king and the queen. And so there's a different history that is genetically encoded in some sense in the American spirit. But I don't think Europe has gone beyond the point of redemption, but it might get ugly before it starts getting good again.
Yes. And I struggle with being an immigrant and thinking, well, how much should I speak for this place that I'm not a citizen? And so, I don't want to step out of turn. And whereas, you're still a North American, a lot of the politics goes hand in hand, as especially Justin Trudeau tries to sort of, I don't know, a lot of his politics feels like that it's trying to impress your girlfriend kind of politics. And
Yeah,
so
trying to. His girlfriend is China, and he's trying to impress China, maybe,
who
and
knows
India.
who his girlfriend is? He's a real slut. I mean, the last weekend, him yelling Slava Ukrainia in a G7 photo, like, yeah, I feel like he's politically a slut. He just wants.
Did you see him? You saw that picture of him hugging Zelensky, like, from the back, and it's his face. Like it's show politics. But I was going to make a meme, like, I wish Trudeau loved Canada the way he loves Zelensky, and our
Yeah.
country would be better off. No, it's wild. Some people might say it's not a girlfriend either, but with Trudeau, that's
Yeah.
the
I've heard
Canadian
that
rumors.
as well. I've heard that as well. One of the things I want to ask you about, and this is just, I'm asking you because I get this a lot. And so I wonder how other people deal with it is like, oh, you're a right wing extremist, what you do. And I feel like I'm not any wing. We're independents and I try to keep like my preference out of the way we handle things. But then you just get called names. Last week, somebody walked up to my son in a social situation and said, oh, his parents, they're right-wing extremists, like to hit at my son in a social situation in middle school. And he didn't know how to take it. And it's like, I'll engage with any of those people on the issues. But the name calling, I wonder if you get it in the same way because we cover similar topics and have a lot of overlap.
Well, I think I jokingly say I must be doing something right when I get called a Zionist and an anti-Semite Nazi in the same day. A self-hating Jew, a
Yeah.
Nazi, a Zionist, Mossad. I get called a Canadian snowflake liberal, and then I get called an ultra-right MAGA extremist. So the words are stupid, and I don't care whatsoever. And the old expression is, if you're not a liberal when you're a young person, you have no heart, and if you're not a conservative when you're an adult, you have no brain.
I've never heard
So
that.
I screwed it up, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I'm not, and what I'm not is a progressive with a capital P, a liberal with a capital L, and a Democrat with a capital D, because those three titles are the invert opposites of what they purport to be. Liberals in Canada are nothing shy of the most fascist, and I'll dare say Hitlerian regime ever. There's nothing liberal about Trudeau's Liberals. There's nothing progressive about the NDP, the New Democrat Party. They literally enact policy that Hitler himself enacted back in the 30s and the 40s. I mean, the medical assistance in dying is a very big issue now in Canada, and it's a sign of progressivism. The idea of euthanizing the mentally ill, potentially mature minors if they go through with that amendment, people who are not terminally ill, people with mental illness, that's not euthanasia anymore. That literally once upon a time was called mercy killings, and the Nazis did it. And so you cloak this under the title of liberalism, progressivism, and you realize what it is and what it is not. So I can say what I'm not. We have to draw hard lines because it's easier to understand things. Call me whatever you want. I'm very nuanced, and I just want to make sure that what I say and do is right and not on the right. And I'll, continue to abide by that. I couldn't care less what people call me.
Yeah, well, that's good. I don't really care as much either, but I get nervous when they come for me on Twitter, like, ooh, am I going to get into a Twitter fight? And then I just leave that usually. But
Well,
when
it's only an attempt to discredit you without having to address the ideas. Oh, you're a right-wing extremist, so I no longer have to address the ideas. People do it even with people who are legitimate right-wing extremists or legitimate whatever.
yeah,
It's not because someone is, it's not because someone's an anti-Semite that everything they say is politically wrong, and you may not get to engage with them as a person because you don't want to, but you don't get to write off every idea just because you've labeled the person something terrible. So it's just a way to avoid discussion and write off the person, which is typically a sign that they don't have any good arguments to write off the ideas.
right. But I guess as a parent, I just worry like, oh, this is going to affect my kid's popularity because I can't defend myself in the lunchroom, and so I said, oh, that person, he said something, we did a segment about taxes, and they're like, his parents are tax dodgers. And I was like, would that guy like to see my taxes then? If he wants to address with me, engage with me, but to just hit at my kids, it's just indicative of the world we live in where, you can call labels and so that it's a lazy way to not study.
Well, for sure. And you fear that it might impede your kids' development. Oh, well, not that. They might be unpopular. I think sooner than later, they're going to be popular because I think sooner than later, people are going to realize that it's been the tyranny of a very vocal minority. And you have that kid, Liam Morrison, out of Massachusetts, who wore the shirt that says there are only two genders, and he lost his court case. But what's clear is that he has the support of a lot more people than he ever thought he had. So, old is new, and free speech will be cool again, and the children of the extremists might be the ones leading the way of the future.
We'll see. I mean, it's also just, you're never cool to your own teenagers. So if you're already getting in the way of their coolness, then this is the problem. But this is something that I deal with all the time. So anyhow, well, I'm glad to have this little chat with you, and I hope we continue to engage. So again, on Rumble, Viva Frei, and also the same on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Oh no. On Twitter, it's the Viva Frei because some
Viva
Russian
Frei.
dude has the handle Viva Frei, and
Oh,
on locals, it's vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
okay, excellent. Well, I'm glad. I hope I can call you my friend. I'm glad to be friends now,
Absolutely.
and I will continue to support your channel in any way I can.
And you guys do great stuff. I do watch you all the time. I'm not always active in the chat because I don't want people thinking I'm trying to hijack the chat, but you guys are doing amazing stuff. So keep it up.
Oh, I lurk in your chat too sometimes. So, and I'm not trying to
Every
hijack it. The reason I do it is for the algorithm, just to boost the algorithm. So sometimes people will say, "I know you from Redacted," but I do it anyway. So I don't know. I've never tried
occasionally
to
if I
hijack your chat.
no, but it's just like sometimes it becomes a distraction, not an attempt to hijack, but it's like you
Yeah.
become a distraction to the show, and you don't want to do that. Every now and again, like I listen to Bongino, and if I have a very, very good joke, I'll buy a Rumble rant, and then
Uh
but then
huh.
you see how maybe you're right though. Maybe it does spur the algorithm.
It does.
Okay,
Any engagement with the channel helps. A thumbs up, or a chat, or some even going back. And so that's. I mean, it's just a small way to support people that you like, is to show YouTube how much you're engaging with it. So I do that. So anyhow,
awesome.
you'll see me there, and we'll see you here again sometime. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much.